Hello and welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we'll be reviewing Spencer. Director Joe Wright asks audiences to spend 3 days with the royal family through the eyes of Princess Diana. Kristen Stewart stars in this unconventional take on the British monarchy and the trappings of tradition. So Matt, what did you think of Spencer? You like the Kermit the Frog?
Yeah.
Kermit the Frog.
Can we call this like a Movie Husband's tea alert? Oh gosh, where do I start with this movie? This is very difficult. Kristen Stewart is wonderful. There's a lot to appreciate in this movie. There are some beautiful shots. I think this movie is at its best when it's dealing with some of these moral dilemmas that Diana has. But I think the problem with this movie is that it just happens to be too surface level. It treats Diana's character with these very specific personality traits. It's dealing with her eating disorder. It is dealing with the fact that she can't really control her life. The movie really sticks too much to these very basic traits that I think the movie itself becomes exactly what Diana fears. Just like how they close the drapes in the house and they sew them shut to keep paparazzi from taking pictures. And she quips about it at one point. She's like, what do you think they're afraid? To see the real me? And, you know, this movie gives us a look behind those curtains, but I don't think it really has anything interesting to say.
It has a very cursory understanding of its characters' motivations. For a film that is trying so hard to be a psychodrama, I'm surprised how not psychological it is. It takes this very expressionistic sort of view that we're supposed to be in Diana's head and it's filmed in the way that she's feeling, and that's really cool and interesting. And this film is flawlessly executed from a technical perspective, right? It looks beautiful. The camera movements are achieving exactly what we want to feel. There are these great shots where Diana's very small in the frame and there's all this negative space and she's kind of running through hallways and very upset. That all looks great. You're right though. I think the script is fairly hollow, and this is a very icy film. It's a movie that's really hard to like, especially because towards the end, it has a rather rousing ending that I don't think is earned. There's an ending where you should kind of be standing up and clapping, and you're saying, what movie did this turn into?
Yeah, it was kind of like Diana has all these problems, and then she just drives away, and all the problems are solved. Life just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And I think this movie treats it a little bit too carelessly.
Yeah, and I think that this film could have actually been a lot better if it leaned heavier into that more expressionistic sort of side that it has, right? There's this great scene during dinner with the pearls, where she kind of rips these pearls and they fall in the soup and she begins eating them. And you know that what you're seeing isn't real, right? It's almost David Lynchian in a way. But that, I think, is more incisive towards her psychology than a lot of other scenes in this film. This film spends a whole lot of time doing a whole lot of nothing, I think.
One thing I did like in terms of a creative choice was that it had very dull contrast. So the colors were more muted, the shadows kind of blended in more with the highlights. I think this was a very conscious design choice, and I think that just highlighted her mood as feeling like her life was lifeless in a way. And I don't know, I kind of appreciated that about it a little bit. I know that's nothing too deep. I think that's the main problem that I had with the movie, is that I just felt like it was skirting the surface of these problems and it wasn't really diving deep enough into them. And I get the metaphorical things that was happening with kind of the pearls and the soup, and I thought all that was great, but there just wasn't enough of it to dive a deeper emotion.
Yeah, I agree. There's some curious choices too, like she's seeing the ghost of Anne Boleyn throughout the movie. I don't think that really worked. I understand this whole drawing the parallel between Princess Diana and Anne Boleyn, but Anne Boleyn was beheaded by her husband because he was accusing her of cheating, but he was cheating? I don't know. That didn't really work for me. And I think it's kind of strange. I think the sequences are strange. I don't think they really work. Can I just say actually about Kristen Stewart that not for a moment did I think this is Kristen Stewart?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I mean, she does look like Diana. I couldn't picture Diana in my mind right now. I mostly remember her from like tabloids when I was a kid and things like that. But I never stopped and said, oh, this is Kristen Stewart acting, giving a great performance as Princess Diana. Like, she is Princess Diana in the film, and she is this character.
She absolutely crushed that aspect. Yeah, not once I felt the same exact way. I can't even add, I have nothing else to add to that.
Yeah, and Kristen Stewart is a wonderful actress. You know, she started things off in Twilight, and I think got a lot of, shit for doing that and whatever. But she has made so many great films since then, or been in so many great films.
One of my early favorites was Adventureland.
There's this movie called Personal Shopper from a couple of years ago that I'm a huge fan of. You mentioned the score. I think the score is awesome. I'm a big fan of Johnny Greenwood, who's the guitarist for Radiohead. He's been scoring films for, about 10 years now, but I think the score is really interesting. There's some times where it's kind of a conventional orchestral score that you would see in a biopic. There's sometimes that these creepy sort of keyboards come in that's almost reminds me of the Halloween soundtrack. And then there's times where it just goes for like free jazz, John Coltrane craziness. I thought it was a very diverse and interesting soundtrack.
Yeah, I think, and that kind of reminded me of something else, is that I feel like tonally this movie is just all over the place. You have these serious tones, you have these... Actually, and we didn't even talk about this yet, but one of my favorite aspects of this movie was the sequences with her and her kids.
Yes.
And so with little George and little William, basically you see their relationship together in a way that I thought was just very well done. And I wish I had seen more of that.
It wants to be a Princess Diana movie. It kind of wants to be a horror movie. It kind of wants to be like a fetch the bolt cutter style, like break yourself of these this trauma kind of thing. I don't think it really succeeds in either of those quadrants. I would have preferred it stick to one. I think the horror one would have been the most interesting. It really more has these kind of flourishes of horror. It's kind of flirting with it, but never really goes there.
Especially because it's supposed to be a fable. So I think if they had leaned more into that kind of idea of a fable and it being fake, I think they could have come out with something a little bit more intriguing here. But I think it's because it was kind of being tied too much to, okay, this is historical things that Diana had happened to her or she went through. And then you have the imagination aspect of like, what would it be like? And what was she possibly going through in those halls? So I think just the clashing of those two things didn't really work for me.
All right, so you ready to go to grades?
Yeah, I give Spencer a B-. There's aspects of this movie that I did enjoy. I thought there was a lot of promise here that I'm not sure it was realized in the right way for me. But other than that, Kristen Stewart was fantastic in this movie. She really did sink into this role. You did not feel like you were seeing Kristen Stewart act. You felt like you were watching Princess Diana.
Yeah, I give this a C+. I think that we're mostly on the same page. This is kind of C+ and B- for me are like a tentative recommend. I think people should go see this movie because Kristen Stewart really is wonderful in it. And again, you're dealing with a lot of very talented people executing at an extraordinary level and it just not really coming together. The feeling you have when you watch The Crown, which is a really well executed show on just about every level, is not the same feeling that I had here. And it's not the same feeling that I've had in other films that go for this sort of expressionistic psychodrama style.
And that's it for our review of Spencer. Spencer is now in theaters, so go check it out. If you've already seen Spencer, let us know in the comments what you thought about the film, and we'll see you next time.